Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to your own Silicon Valley Tech Talks show, your go to place to learn about technology trends and innovations directly from the leaders. This is the second part of my podcast with Olaf Groth. In the first part, we talked about where does China stand on AI innovations versus US, and what are some of the area of cooperation between China and the West. In this second part, we'll talk about the increasing tension around access to the global data, the concept of global data economy, and what are some of the tools which will help build that. For those of you who have missed the first part of my podcast, I've pasted the link in the description of this post. So let's continue our discussion with Olaf in this second part. As you know, data is paramount as it comes to training AI models and then using inference to extract information out of AI models. And I think that China would not have obviously any issue getting access to all their domestic data. I believe tension will be around access to the global data. So, how do you see this battleground shaping up between US and China on the access to global data? And what will be the implications on end user of this tension?
Yeah, look, I'm very glad, Faisal, that you very astutely mentioned the third pillar of what I call the cognitive triad, right? Which is, we talked about the first two earlier. One is compute power, right? Chips, etc. The other one is AI models, right? And the third one, of course, is data. That's the cognitive triad. And if you want to develop AI applications, you have to harness at least parts of these three different pillars. So data is absolutely critical. And in fact, we're going to be writing our next book about the global data economy in 2025. Stay tuned on that because data is so important and because it is quickly becoming another really central point of geopolitics and geoeconomics around the world, not just chips and models, but also data. One country's data ocean, as it were, to extrapolate from data lake, right, is very precious raw material for the training of models on these precious chips. And we will see more and more discernment between countries about where data from their citizens is going and how it is being used. And so we will see more executive orders and legislation coming out of the United States restricting the transfer of all three pillars more and more around the world. Other countries will also say, look, I will need to look after my own people and my own national and economic security. And so data will become a key object, as it were, of negotiations around the world. We saw this already instantiated in, Elon Musk going to Beijing, meeting with, I believe, Li Qiang, the premier, and asking him to please be able to take some of the data gathered on driving performance of the Tesla cars in China to be able to bring that back to the United States. Because obviously you need that for model training here, right? Because this is where the servers are, as it were. And that came ironically at the same time that we were here in the United States going after TikTok for taking U.S. user data to Beijing. And so the difference, of course, being that Elon Musk asked for permission to do that, and allegedly TikTok did not. So there is a difference there, but you also catch the irony that that we need a certain amount of data crossing borders in order to be processed by the best tools on the best chips, and then bring the best solutions across the border again. So a world in which we have complete technological sovereignty, as it were, over all three pillars, chips, models, and data, will be a more expensive world because we will have fewer efficiencies. Countries will rely more and more on their own. And that, famously, of course, yields fewer scale economies. And so data will become more and more important. And that means, to come to the second part of your question, that means that individuals should also be very mindful about what data they give to whom and how that data travels, right? there are many reasons to share data and in fact some obligations, right? I think when we're thinking about public health, every citizen should be obligated to contribute some level of data that is of course privacy assured, anonymized, with some degree of agency to give that into the public pool so that public health agencies can obviously train their models, get the most recent insights, guide drug manufacturers on when and where to produce drugs and things like that. Um, but beyond that, of course, when data is being used for commercial purposes, much less national security and military purposes, every citizen, I think, should reflect on, what data am I contributing to that, and do I want to, and what will that do in turn to me? And so, we will need more solutions that enable people to contribute data, right, in an assured, agency assured way, growing the pool, right? But also feeling more secure and more safe and more assured and more trusting that that data will be used for good purposes and will respect my preferences. And so we believe that agency assured data future is coming. We believe that that actually will grow the global data market, as it were, rather than shrink it, right? We always think of privacy, for instance, as something that always needs to restrict and clamp down on something and lock it away forever. But that actually doesn't have to be like that. That's an unnecessarily zero sum notion, and that's really very constricting. And it's an artificial sort of juxtaposition of pitching of privacy against growth, right? Privacy against prosperity. But again, that's unnecessarily zero sum and really a bit naive when we are now developing the tools that can do both, and that can literally, to use an American saying, have your cake and eat it too, right?
Olaf, can you give me some examples of some of the tools which will help us create that bigger data market?
Sure can. I mean, look, there are, of course, many privacy assuring solutions out there and approaches. Some people are saying, look, we actually need like data labor unions, right? That where you flow all your data to them, and they, in a trustworthy manner, will distribute that to whoever pays the right amount and has the right trust assurance. And then there are other solutions that will just shut everything off, like ad blockers, privacy browsers, and things like that. And while there is, obviously, as in every free market, room for experimentation with those solutions, we don't think they're the best ones. We actually think that solutions that allow you to watermark your particular data footprint, right, to then disaggregate that data footprint and reassemble data clusters that meet certain market demand, right? And that will then allow you to put those data clusters into the market, get appropriate bids from people against those clusters, and then obviously are licensed to be given away. They are trust assured, both in terms of the quality of the data footprint, as well as, of course, the trustworthiness of the buyer, as it were, right? That those solutions that allow you to capture the provenance and the property that is created with your data footprint, to disaggregate, reaggregate, and trade, that is actually leading to a much more rich creation and allocation of value around the economy, and will, of course, so incentivized, right? Very much in line with capitalist motive, right? Will incentivize everybody who is creating data to create more high value data and trade it. Okay, and then obviously, in line with your own privacy charter that governs that process, also decide, hey, here are the parts of my data footprint that I don't want to have touched, even looked at, much less disaggregated, reaggregated, and sold, right? And that is completely private and off limits. And we think, of course, in different countries, different institutions will govern, who decides what's off limits and what's in limits. here in the United States and in Western Europe, we think there should be a certain amount of individual control that is given to individuals to have their own charter and determine that for themselves, because frankly, privacy is not a one size fits all kind of problem, and therefore there can't be a one size fits all solution beyond minimum regulatory coverage, right, for the minimum protection afforded to people. We have actually designed a solution concept to that effect and have patented it and are now looking for buyers for those patents, because we are advisors, we're researchers, we're thought leaders, we are very good at designing solutions, but we're not in a position to globally scale out these solutions. And there's other people that are working on solutions like ours, and we welcome that competition, because that's exactly what the global data economy will benefit from, and it will grow. We're confident. There are, of course, all kinds of questions you can ask about, what happens to people who don't have rich data footprints, right, and so on and so forth. And those need to be tackled, but step by step, one problem at a time. We have to now take this step into the agency assured, privacy assured global data economy in order to get that to the next level of growth. So I'm very confident that we'll see more and more of this over the next 3 to 5 years, and that will open up so much more potential if safeguarded, both internally in countries as well as between countries.
This is very interesting. Thank you so much, Olaf, for attending our show. I'm sure audience learned a lot from your insights.
It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to being back soon.
Sure.